Expression clearly said that it was hard to believe such words coming from a maniac like him. Mayor, I'm Zach, the reason why neither of you can bring yourselves to trust Maman-san is because he showed up just as the vampire did, am I correct? However, I feel that Maman-san's words can adequately explain that. The two men nodded in agreement. In addition, if that female vampire really was being hunted by Maman-san, there's also a rational explanation for why she ceased her attack on the Lady Adventure when it saw Maman-san's rare potion. In addition, it's possible that the female adventurer was spared, because the vampire wanted to let Maman-san know she was here. I see, so she wanted to let Maman-san think she was nearby, and make him stay here. The female vampire must have seen the female adventurer's potion, and suspected that she was related to Maman-san. Thus, she let her go, to spread the news of her presence. It does make sense. Given the fact that Maman-kun chased that vampire all the way here, I can't imagine she would be happy about learning that he was around. Indeed, Mayor. However, while we do not yet know which country he hails from, we should still treat him well and be on our guard. Although I don't think he's that suspicious, Coco, I'd like to discuss the matter of Maman-san's magic items with him. His suit of armor looks quite valuable as well. Speaking of Maman-kun, there's something I wanted to ask you, Mayor, where are the corpses of Zuranon? I have no idea. The mayor scowled as he said this. The mangled corpses left behind by Eanes had been placed in storage under the eyes of layers upon layers of guards, but they had vanished after daybreak. Although they suspected that someone had broken in and stolen them, the guards had not been attacked, and there were no signs of anyone suspicious. The storage area had been built in a way that inhibited the use of teleportation magic. One could say that it was something of a secret room. Thus, there was no sign of how the intruders had even managed to enter. It was as though the corpses had vanished in a puff of smoke. They were still secretly searching for clues within the city, but nothing had turned up. The possibility of finding anything relevant were close to zero. In other words, there was nothing they could learn from the two corpses. Could it be that the unholy ritual they were conducting turned them into undead, which then escaped? We cannot rule that possibility out entirely. How troubling, we couldn't even get any evidence from it. The only possibility is that secret shrine under that chapel. No. It would be good if we could learn something useful from it. From what you said, it would seem that Maman-kun did not enter that place. If we found an ownerless magic item of great value in there, could we hand it to him? If those items have nothing to do with the ritual, then by adventurers' rules, they would belong to him. Part 4. Eanes sped through the streets. The warm wind filtered in through the slits in his helmet, blowing over the location which corresponded to his eyes. Perhaps if he had eyeballs, he would be blinking non-stop, but Eanes lacked any sensory organs, so all he felt was the wind is blowing. Looking down, he saw the earth flying past him beneath his feet, like a loosed arrow. He did not know if it was because he was close to the ground, or because of some other reason, but it felt like he was moving faster than he actually was. Of course, he was not frightened in the least. Still, every time his body bounced up, he reflexively channeled more strength into his legs. Although Hamsuk could maintain its balance well, it was still a Jungarian hamster, albeit a gigantic one. Eanes needed to spread his legs wide to ride it, and this unstable riding posture was compounded by a lack of reins, barding, or a saddle. Even someone with extraordinary balance like Eanes had to be careful not to fall off. It'll be hard to swing my swords while riding Hamsuk. Perhaps I should have a set of riding tack and barding made for it soon. The head blacksmith's making a decoy suit of armor. Perhaps I could get some help there. It was not just the unsteady ride which brought that topic to mind, but also because of the shape which rode beside him. Narbril was mounted on a horse while staying in line with Eanes. She rode a statue of animal war horse, a magic item which summoned a massive destrier in heavy plate barding. She was a dazzling sight, skillfully guiding her gigantic horse as it galloped down the city streets. Her ponytail swayed in the wind, and her brown cape fluttered out behind her. The way she sat tall in the saddle was as though she had come straight off a movie screen. In contrast, Eanes rode a giant Jungarian hamster. How could he even compete? He looked forward, despair filling his heart, and saw a group of men there. They were a team of 4 people, and they seemed better equipped than the members of Swords of Darkness, with whom Eanes had traveled with earlier. Eanes tucked the matter of the Swords of Darkness into the corner of his mind, letting go of his complicated thoughts concerning that issue, and then studied the horses those people rode. They were majestic beasts. Eanes was no equestrian, but given that their coats gleamed and their bodies were in fine fettle, they should have been superior horses. The 4 mounted men rode in a formation shaped like an isosceles triangle, and they too looked like they had sprung from a movie. I must look like an idiot riding Hamsuk. I certainly feel stupid enough. Eanes was quite depressed, but he seemed to be the only one who felt that way. That's an impressive-looking creature you're riding there. Those words came from one of Igvarj's comrades as he tried to strike up conversation with Eanes. Unlike Igvarj, there was no hostility in his voice. Instead, it would seem Hamsuk had piqued his adventurous curiosity, and his words were filled with wonder and awe. What manner of beast is that? Is it famous? It is the wise king of the forest. Eh? What? That legendary monster. The staring man's eyes went wide as he exclaimed in surprise. I still can't get used to that sort of reaction. Do they have to make such a big deal over a hamster, HM? Out of the corner of his eye, Eanes could see Hamsuk waffling its whiskers in pride, and its ears twitched in time with the movement. It was probably paying attention to Eanes' conversation, given the way it was shuddering under him. Eanes mercilessly chopped Hamsuk on the head with his gauntlet hand, which produced a deep, reverberating sound from the creature's skull. No, I just heard Igvarj talk about it. I see, he's seeing red again. How did he describe me? Ah, forget it, you don't have to tell me. I can guess from the looks on your faces. Ha ha ha, my apologies. That guy, he's not really a bad sort, but he gets blinded by what's in front of him sometimes. It's a wonder how you guys have stayed safe with a companion like that. Or has this party changed out a lot of members? No, everybody's been with the team ever since it was formed. That guy's a pretty good adventurer, unlike what his personality would suggest. Pretty good, huh? Eanes turned to Igvarj and received a hostile glare in response. You guys must have had a really hard time, Eanes snorted. Then, after dropping that line, he raised his hand, indicating that Narbril should suppress the anger building within her towards Igvarj. Eanes did not want to start a fight here. There were more important things which had to be done at this moment. After signaling to Narbril, Hamsuk raised its head. My lord, your servant's head hurts. Tears sparkled in those black, beady eyes. Eanes felt a twinge of regret. Perhaps he had used too much force. Still, it would have been bad if he had been tossed off at those speeds. He would not be hurt even if he hit the ground. Eanes had once conducted an experiment with one of the vassals, who had similar damage reduction to his own, and it had not felt any pain even after being dropped from a height of 1 kilometer. The problem was what would happen if his traveling companions began having their doubts about Eanes' toughness. Now that they had come this far together, Eanes was sincere about getting along with them until the very end. Run more evenly. I don't want to have to use strength when clinging to you. Understood. My lord must be worried about his servant's body. This time, Hamsuk teared up because it was moved, and Eanes ordered it to watch its front. It was then that Igvarj's companion from earlier addressed him in a respectful tone. Oh, that's amazing, to think you can maintain your balance in such a precarious position. This would be pretty dangerous, even for someone with a good sense of balance like yours, no? It's because I'm used to it, though I do intend to have it fitted for a saddle soon. A harness, huh? I don't really like that, just a jape of course. If my lord desires it, then your servant has no objections. Under Narbril's reproachful gaze, Hamsuk scrambled to display the attitude befitting of a loyal vassal. The vibrations coming from beneath Eanes' waist were different from the tremors of travel. Eanes furrowed his illusionary eyebrows beneath his helm. There's no need to frighten a hamster with killing intent, is there? While I do appreciate that sort of loyalty, isn't that going a bit too far? It's fine to look down on human beings, but there's a time and place for that sort of thing. She doesn't quite seem to grasp that concept. Was she really designed that way? There's not much which can be done if she's like that, but just having Hamsuk with him was a huge boost to his fame, and the combination of the wise king of the forest's staunch loyalty to himself was far different from the fear it inspired in others. The first would make people think highly of Eanes and consider him to be a noble adventurer. Although it did not mean much to him, he wanted to continue developing in that direction since he had the chance to do so. This was also because he wanted to be regarded as a hero. In addition, it would be helpful to have people outside of Nazarick swear loyalty to him. That made Eanes reflect on his actions, and he considered that he might have been too rough towards Hamsuk. Therefore, he lightly patted the place which he had chopped just now, as though stroking a small animal. "My lord, this is embarrassing." The sound of grinding teeth was clearly audible to Eanes, through the galloping of horses. "You're part of the reason I'm doing this, no? Speaking of which, how hard are you grinding your teeth anyway? If she's really jealous, then I should do something for her, right? Narbrel's been very loyal too, but what kind of reward can I give her?" As Eanes agonized about whether to give her a ring or some other treasure, Igvarj spoke in a thoroughly unfriendly manner. "Oi, Mammon, we're here." After indicating that it understood, Hamsuk gradually reduced its speed. Unlike a horse, Eanes could communicate directly to Hamsuk. Eanes had no equestrian experience, and was not at all confident about stopping a horse. "It's a little embarrassing to ride Hamsuk, but I should be glad, because I don't have to ride a horse. Still, the time might come when I might have to do so. I should probably practice that a little in case of emergencies." Eanes leapt off Hamsuk, then petted it in gratitude. Narbrel transformed her horse back into a statuette, and the men tied up their horses. "Then, let's go. What formation should we take when moving?" "We'll take the lead, you can follow behind. I don't care what you do, just keep us in mind and be careful." After hearing Igvarj's annoyed response, Eanes led Narbrel and Hamsuk into the forest. Much like the forest near Karn village, the woodlands here bore no signs of human habitation, and were very difficult to traverse. However, Eanes was festooned in magic items, and thus it seemed like a flat plain to him. In addition, his anxiety over Shaltir made him quicken his pace, to the point where Igvarj had to ask them to slow down. Well, he did ask them, but his crude words were full of hostility. Narbrel, who was walking beside Eanes, very nearly turned around to rebuke him, but Eanes forced her to keep quiet. "We're almost there, act like an adult." Eanes smiled under his helmet as he saw the frustrated look on Narbrel's face. By now, Hamsuk had sensed something amiss, and its ears twitched continuously, as though it had heard something. Eanes knew what had prompted that response from Hamsuk, and so he whispered into Hamsuk's ear, "Stop that." "What?" "My lord, what are you?" "The sound of metal you might have heard is from my subordinates. Pay it no heed." Yes, it is." "My apologies, my lord. By the way, have you picked up on anyone following us aside from that?" He had ordered Nigredo to establish surveillance, and had taken many other precautions besides, but he asked again just to be sure. "No, other than that, almost nobody is following us." "Oh, what's happening up there?" asked the man who had been riding beside Eanes. Since the team's representative Igvarj was not asking that question, his presence here needed no explanation. Eanes waved a hand, indicating that nothing was wrong. "Really?" The man did not seem happy with that answer, but after sensing that Eanes did not want to talk about it, he shrugged and did not press the matter. "Well, it's not like I hate you or anything." Eanes merely thought those words without speaking them as he silently advanced through the forest. After they had traveled some distance, the sound of weapons being drawn one after the other came from the rear. Eanes halted and leisurely looked back. "Is something the matter? Is something the matter? You're on point, you should be more alert." This was the first time the other men showed their approval for Igvarj's hostility. "Oi! You hiding over there, come out slowly." Igvarj was shouting at a tree which was large enough to hide a person's silhouette. Amidst the growing tension in the air, Eanes calmly walked over to that tree. A somewhat panicked voice called out to him, but Eanes paid it no heed. Narbril watched like it was the natural thing to do. Hamsuk had his doubts, but he did not offer any opposition. As he drew close to the tree, someone stepped out from behind it, as though in response. The person in question was dressed in a suit of full-plate armor, which was the same black as Eanes' own. That person held a gigantic axe, a bardiche, which radiated a sickly green glow. The commanding presence of this warrior filled the scene with a strange air. Or rather, only parts of it were filled with strangeness. Eanes gently raised a hand and said, "Thank you for coming all this way." "Thank you, Eanes-sama." The warrior, Albedo, bowed respectfully to her lord and master. "Then, shout, who is she? Is she a friend of yours? And what's this about Eanes-sama?" These loud questions bombarded Eanes from behind, one after the other. This was an entirely understandable reaction for Igvarj and his crew, but it was an unpardonable offense to Albedo, who was still bowing to Eanes. Fiery rancor blazed within her heart, and then she let it out, as though she planned to incinerate everything in the area with the flames of her wrath. Hamsuk shuddered, every hair on its body standing on end, more than ever before. Given that even a bystander had this sort of reaction, how much worse must it have been for the targets of Albedo's fury? Their faces had turned white and oily sweat cascaded down their foreheads as they realized that their insignificant lives would be snuffed out shortly. "Allow me to introduce you to everyone. This is my companion, Albedo." "Eanes-sama, I find it hard to believe that you would consider me a companion. After all, I am but your loyal servant." "That is true, so I take those words back. She is my subordinate. Does that answer your question?" Then, Albedo, commenced the next step, as we planned. The men were still staring in stunned silence as Albedo walked towards them. "Oh, I almost forgot. My name is not Mammon. My real name is Eanes. Not that you need to remember that, of course." Albedo smiled smugly as she beheld the confused looks on the men's faces. However, that smile was as icy as the grave. "Then, Albedo, deal with them. Take one alive, no, another one might be good as a spare. The jamming is already in place, so you can go ahead and use magical communication." Just as the shock from hearing Eanes' calm and dispassionate orders began filtering into the minds of Igvarj and his people, Eanes continued his instructions, "Take their corpses back to Nazareth. If they're strong enough, we can use them for experiments in making high-tier undead." "Understood." Albedo slowly raised her weapon, the gigantic axe. There was no murderous intent or hostility in that action. That was only to be expected. After all, to Albedo, chopping off the heads of inferior lifeforms, humans, was little more than cutting the leaves off a daikon. If this were not Eanes' order, she might not even need to swing her weapon to verify her calmness. Igvarj and his party might not have understood the situation, but they still knew they were in danger, and they raised their swords in preparation to fight. Bathed in looks of shock, Eanes merely shrugged. "Ah, sorry about that. I misspoke back in the guild. When I said following me is certain death, I actually meant if you follow me, I will kill all of you." Thus did Eanes pronounce their death sentence. "I warned you, but you would not listen. These are the consequences of your choice. Accept them with dignity." Igvarj and his group chose to retreat. The reason why they had all immediately fallen back without so much as verifying the plan with hand signals was because they understood the vast difference between their respective battle strengths. In addition, they did not retreat as one, but they split up to flee, in order to maximize their chances of survival. Their reaction was outside the scope of Albedo's predictions, and she was a moment too late to respond. Although her physical attributes far exceeded those of Eanes, chasing an enemy through the forest was still quite troublesome. She chased down her first target in an instant, and rendered him unconscious with a capturing-type skill. Albedo's keen hearing picked up on the sounds of metal mixed with the wails of the fleeing men. However, she could not get an accurate fix on their position due to the trees blocking her line of sight. In addition, people without metal armor would only make noise when they stepped on grass or twigs, which only made it harder for Albedo to pinpoint their location, given that she lacked levels in Ranger and Rogue-type classes. Albedo shook her head and sighed. Then she issued a command, Mare, deal with those two. Ah, right, eliminate the man who was disrespectful to Ain Sama. Part 5. Igvarj ran. Back in the guild, he had understood to some extent that Mammon was a better adventurer than himself, but Igvarj was unwilling to acknowledge that fact. However, when he personally witnessed the commanding figure of Mammon's majestic riding beast, the ancient, legendary monster known as the Wise King of the Forest, he had no choice but to